Okay, hi, I'm Rachel McLeod. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today I am going to be interviewing Corinne, who is a recent graduate from my program, Inner World Transformation. And she is one of the people that I've interviewed who's had the shortest amount of time through the program. And I thought that would be really fun for you guys just to see her story. It's pretty amazing. She is an amazing woman and incredibly strong, and so I want to let her introduce herself, and we'll dive in. I'll ask some questions and we'll get to know a little bit more about you, Corinne.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Rachel. I'm really happy to be here with everybody. My name is Corinne. I went through Rachel's program very recently. I believe I started in August and ended in October. So I'm really excited to share about my journey, both in the program before and now after. I live up in the New Jersey, New York area, and I am a health coach. So I'm also, before I even dealt with my own anxiety, I've always been very interested in this topic to begin with. And then I've also lived it, lived it as well. So I look forward to being with you guys today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And let's start there. What was your life like before Inner World Transformation?
Yeah, I have had anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety pretty much my whole life, even before I knew exactly what it was. And I've had like kind of flare-ups, if you will. Like I've been like a high functioning person, but behind the scenes, not as much. I've held awesome jobs, I've had amazing friends, but I'd come home at the end of the day and just my anxiety and my thoughts, it was really tough. And I've had kind of a few different, I guess, flare-ups, if you will, where it just was all consuming. Years ago, back in 2011, and then most recently, I've had probably my worst flare-up, where, I have panic disorder along with generalized anxiety disorder. So this past, I guess, year and a half, just nonstop panic attacks. I mean, most of my day was spent, either trying to like prevent one or being afraid I was going to have one or having one, or then trying to cope with the aftermath of it. So it was, and it, my life like was big and I did so many things, but I felt, especially more recently, it getting smaller and smaller and smaller so that I could just manage this daily anxiety. So I was definitely in a tough spot. It felt very alone, felt very like I had tried other ways to manage my anxiety, and nothing seemed to touch it, especially more recently. So I was struggling, which, I was so happy when I found this program because I needed it. I needed it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're frozen in Facebook land because of my internet, but I believe that you can hear us perfectly well. And I'm going to keep asking you questions, and I'm going to switch us over to a different setup. So you're going to watch me not be super connected here,
Awesome.
but I want to keep us moving because what you're talking about is so real and is exactly where so many people are, and was such a hard place to be in. I can't imagine, like when I think about you and I think about just being and I mean, I've heard your story over and over again, right? But to be in a panic attack for as long as you were in a panic attack is mind blowing.
It 100%. It was, I mean, there was no way to live. It was no way to live. I realized like my quality of life was just, it wasn't there. And so it was so uncomfortable. I started to, not even really trust my own body and my own sensations. And unfortunately, spending so much time in that state, then everything was so heightened all the time. And so even something like a year or three ago that wouldn't have ever even bothered me, or, I would have been nervous about, but I could handle it, like literally set me off, into a panic state. Like it took so little to kind of go into that panic state toward the end there that, it was really, 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 it was really difficult.
Wow. I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine. You know, it's like when we're talking panic disorder, you're thinking a panic attack here, a panic attack there, a panic attack every time you try to drive, every time
Yep.
a panic attack about panic attacks, you know?
Yeah.
You don't think about them being constant.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. I don't think, I mean, honestly, thinking back on it now, kind of being a little bit removed from it, I don't think I had many moments where I was calm, you know, like I don't think, and I don't know how I did it, to be honest. I don't know. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just, I just powered through it, but it was not easy. It was not easy at all.
Right.
And I think then, like you said, it's a cycle, right? Because you feel anxious and you don't like that feeling, and then it, you know, goes into a panic attack, and then you're nervous about that, and then you finally get out, and then you're nervous about the next one, and then like, yeah, and it just became like this snowball. It was just like literally like rolling down this big hill.
Yes.
It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that was like, you know, and the other thing with panic disorder is that it's like, it just makes, and with anxiety in general, but it really makes your life small.
Yes. Yes.
How would you give words to that feeling?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because well, it's not funny, but you know, I think on the outside, people would have no idea, you know, unless you were very close to me, that I had any type of panic disorder or anxiety disorder. Like I was doing it. I was, like I said, I was going out with friends. I was living a fun life in New York. I was, you know, so, and I forced myself to, like, even though I was anxious inside doing this stuff, I forced myself to do it. And I don't think I actually listened to myself. And so, but that caught up with me. That caught up with me. My body, I think, eventually was like, listen to me. Like, this is too much. You're not living your life in alignment with yourself, in the sense that, you know, you're working till, you know, midnight, and then not doing any self-care, and then trying to people please. Like it snowballed into this state where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so instead of, I didn't know how to deal with that when that happened though. So instead of, you know, trying to look at like what was causing this, how did my anxiety pile up like this, I tried to manage my anxiety by making my life smaller, because everything started to make me anxious. Like going out with a friend to dinner started making me anxious because the restaurant was too stimulating, or I was like, oh my gosh, what if I'm going to have a panic attack at, you know, out at dinner, and I can't like get to a safe space. So I started to become afraid to do that. Exercise has been something that has always helped me personally, you know, and I played volleyball since I was 12. Like it's always been such a big part of my life, but I started to get triggered. My anxiety started to get triggered by even exercising. So then I stopped doing that. And so my life, like I was trying to manage my anxiety and my fear by not going to a place that felt unsafe for me. And before I knew it, that was just my apartment. That was my apartment. And eventually, even some places in my apartment didn't feel as safe. You know, it literally got smaller and smaller to the place where I was just existing in my apartment. And that was horrible. Like, I don't want to live that way, you know? And I think there was shame in that. I think there was also, you know, that on top of the anxiety, it just was really hard to get out from under. And like I said, no one really knew, especially when COVID hit, and no one was out anywhere anyways. So like I was still contacting people and chatting and doing my thing, but inside I was like really suffering. And yeah, like literally I could see my life getting smaller and smaller. And that I was like, this is not what I want for myself. You know, this is not sustainable. And I don't want it to be sustainable. I don't want, you know, and there has to be a way out, but I couldn't see what that was. I couldn't see what I needed to do. Because everything, even, you know, so I did start talk therapy. I've been involved in talk therapy for so much of my life. And at times it was very helpful, but I felt like what would happen when I was so anxious is talk therapy would actually, for me at least, it seemed to make it a little bit worse, because I would be maybe bringing up topics that were very stressful, but I didn't know how to calm my body down when I was doing it and when I was talking about it. So I was living, you know, I was trying to soothe my anxiety by talking about it, but it actually was triggering my anxiety more. And then sometimes I also wouldn't even bring up really triggering topics, like my health anxiety. I really never touched that in talk therapy because it was so stressful that I knew I couldn't handle talking about it. So, I tried things like that and just nothing was seeming to really work. Like it got to the point, like in the past, sometimes it would, like in the past, like maybe 2011, when my panic disorder really started, I switched jobs, which was a huge relief. It was more, a more work-life balance with the job. I moved to a different area that was a little bit quieter and calmer. And I went to talk therapy. I actually went on medication as well. And that actually took the edge off. And I was able to then proceed in my life again. Like, okay. But I actually hadn't dealt with the core issues. So it was a Band-Aid. It truly was a Band-Aid that then I snowballed like all these things that I wasn't doing for myself, like listening to myself, my inner voice, stuff, I was people pleasing. I'm highly sensitive and I wasn't, really managing that part of my personality well. So before you know it, started snowballing again. And more recently, nothing touched it. Like nothing. Talk therapy didn't touch it. My medication wasn't really touching it. Like, so this past year, I would say, forced me to do something different. Like before I put Band-Aids and then would just start living my life again, this forced me to really do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And how did you find inner world transformation?
Yeah. So it was in the summer and it came up on my Facebook actually. Like it came up on my Facebook news feed because I think I've been looking for, like I'd been Googling and looking up like different modalities, different, like I had learned about tapping actually.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe a few, like last spring, I learned about tapping as part of it, kind of like an anxiety program thing that I did. And that was life changing, honestly. That got me through the horrible year until I met you, Rachel. That like kept me hanging on. And so I was looking up tapping, I was looking up stuff, and then up on Facebook, your webinar came up, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my gosh, whoa! Like just the way you talked about anxiety and panic, the way you talked about it as something that there is hope. Like there are things that we can do to heal. And I think hearing that message, and then also you had concrete tools that you talked about. It wasn't just like, oh, you know what, like chat with me and it's going to be fine. Like you actually gave concrete tools that you use, and you do use those in your program. And I'm like, these are things I've never used before. This is a different approach. I'm really interested in this. And I really loved your energy when I watched the webinar, and I'm like, I'm signing up for a call. Like I'm doing it. I'm going to sign up. And I did. And then we had such an incredible conversation. And I was like, okay, I think everything's pointing that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I just think it's interesting. I always believe that like when you're ready, the teacher will come. I feel like I was really ready to try something new. Like I was kind of at rock bottom with my anxiety and my panic disorder. And I think that was kind of divine intervention that we were brought together, that I saw your thing, and that we chatted, because it's truly changed my life. It really has.
Okay. So good. So good. And in the webinar, in everything that I do, I really try to make it clear what working with me would be like, and how to help yourself heal, how to help your brain heal. And yet I feel like there's still like a level of blind trust that has to happen. And I'm working on that. Yes. But I wonder for you, here, we're talking about this program. I'm telling you, I know I can help you resolve this problem. I am 100% confident. And I'm telling you that this is how we'll do it and all this stuff. And then, and what, as we're having that conversation, what was that like for you to go through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, talking to you and sharing, because at first, I shared a little bit about why I even reached out, what I was looking for. And then for you to then be like, this is solvable. Like this, you can heal from this. And like hearing that from you, someone who has a ton of experience with this, and is, you're a social worker, like you study this is your thing, like, what you're talking about. And to hear that from somebody who is in this field felt so empowering and inspiring. And I also think the fact that it was laid out that these different tools we would use was really helpful to me, because I could see that these tools were different than I've ever used. And I needed to try something different. Like something different had to happen. And to have someone who was experienced with these tools and who would be approaching this topic of anxiety and panic and all of this from a different angle was exciting for me, and also gave me a lot of hope, because clearly what I was doing and had been doing was not working. I could not keep going down that same path,
Yeah.
and this was a bit of a different path. And there was blind trust though, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and it's an investment, it's a big investment. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, I'm nervous about the investment piece, but you know what, like, this is my life. This is my life, and I cannot live my life the way I'm living it right now. Like, I am worth investing in, and I am worth giving this a shot, because I want to live a full life and I don't want to be held back by this anymore. And that, my place where mentally where I was like, I need to try something different. Just, I don't know. I really trusted what you were saying, and trusted your experience, and also your confidence in, like, we can fix this. Like, I've been here before. I've worked with people who have been here before. Like, we can do this. It all kind of the combination of those things really allowed me to kind of take that leap, and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest in myself. Yeah. And I mean, I can't even, I'm so happy I did. Like, literally the best. Honestly, I think this is one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It has changed my life, truly changed my life. I never thought I could feel on the other side of all this, and granted, I still have anxiety, right? Like, I still deal with it on a daily basis. It's not that it just, like, after 8 weeks, it was like, poof, it's gone. I'm cured. No, but like, I finally feel like I have control over it. Before, I felt like my body and mind were just kind of like in control, in the driver's seat. I was just along for the ride. But I finally feel like I am in the driver's seat with all of this, and I have tools. I have hope. So, best thing I ever did. Every dime was so worth it. I think everyone should do it, no matter what you're dealing with. I think these tools, like, I think everyone in the world should do this. I really mean that. These are things that I just wish everyone knew, because I think it could solve so many problems, and because everyone has stuff, everyone has trauma, everyone has pain, everyone deals with their own stuff. And these tools help no matter what you're going through. They really help. Yeah.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Let's dive in a little bit to what happened in the beginning. What was your first breakthrough? What was that first week like? Because we're kind of, I'm explaining things, and you're watching the training videos, you're getting acclimated, you're learning the first strategy, and we're customizing it to you. And you were very different than the other ladies in the program.
Absolutely.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to think of. I think it was even the session right before I joined the group. Like, it was that kind of hour session that I had with you. And I remember that. And then that first session with the group, I mean, I had so much anxiety. I literally, even just thinking about my anxiety gave me anxiety. And because I was already so heightened. And so I think immediately when you gave me tools, like some of the holding points, the tapping, and you did them with me. Like, you're like, okay, you can kind of sense that, like, I was getting overwhelmed, or, you could kind of sense that was happening. You're like, okay, hold here, and you knew what to tell me to do. And it worked. Like, the tools worked, and I was able to calm down and kind of, but I'll tell you, like, the first maybe week or two, it caused me a lot of anxiety to think about dealing with my anxiety. But the thing that helped was I knew I had you and the group. I had that support. I wasn't just alone doing this. And because of the frequency of our meetings, you do it twice a week, 2 hours each time. Too much time didn't pass before I saw you guys again and was able to kind of process what I had been feeling the last few days. So there's so much support built into the program that you're never just left out on your own. And so, that first week was maybe a little I was nervous. I was nervous to face my anxiety, but very quickly, with maybe in not even 2 weeks, I felt a remarkable difference. And by remarkable difference, I mean, I was calm. I was calmer. Like I wasn't like on this like heightened state 24 hours a day. Like I already felt like that calmness again that I had missed for the past year or
Mm.
two. I felt like my body kind of like breathed a bit of a sigh of relief. And the tapping, that I did, like that was key. I think knowing too, like if I started to feel anxious, knowing I could start doing something that would calm my body down, that gave me a lot of confidence, because I think with the panic disorder, I felt so out of control. And so being able to say, okay, you don't have to just let it go off the rails. Like pay attention, don't judge yourself, pay attention to what's going on. But then you also have this like intervention that you can do to help your body kind of process what's going on. It was, yeah. So I would say after like 2 weeks, I felt different. I felt a lot different. I also think the way you framed our healing process was so helpful for me to visualize how, trauma and what we deal with kind of get stuck here, and we have to bring it through a healing pathway here where it doesn't have as much hold on us, not hold on us, but doesn't have as much of, it's not as much of a trigger. It's your brain processes it, and that's what you need to do. That's what these processes are helping you do. Get all this stuff that's stuck back here. I think hearing that really helped me too, because I think sometimes I felt like my body was just like malfunctioning. But to know why that was happening was really helpful for me. It really helped me not feel like something was drastically, horribly wrong with me, and that it makes sense why I'm feeling this way, and this is why, and this is how we can help that. So yeah, like I said, first week I was very nervous, but I would say after that I started feeling results after 2 weeks, which was shocking because I literally had spent a full year and a half in nothing but a panic attack, and have spent all those years prior in some state of anxiety.
Yes. And I was just thinking about our first sessions. In the first session, I'm always, we have tools, and I'm trying to match them up with you and seeing your state of reactivity. And you were so sensitive to any little
Yes.
thing at that point that it was like, okay, well, because even the tapping at that point was really even triggering for you.
Yes.
And so it was like, I was actually a little excited. I was excited because I had never had a client who I could not use tapping with, and I could not use EMDR with, and I could not use, and it was like, okay, we're going into the bag. Let's do what we got. And so it's just this great challenge that I was experiencing over here. But when we found the right match with the interventions, it was like you started calming, and we started our work. And then with the first strategy, it wasn't something like we looked through all the symptoms, and we found the one you could do.
Exactly.
And it was like, once the one that you could do, your brain just was like, you were just rocking. And I was like, okay, look at us go, and you were on it. And we did not face your panic attacks right away, because you couldn't go there. There was no wiggle room. And so we would just keep taking these other routes, like for the first week, I remember.
Yes.
And I would make sure we stayed off of that. And then it was like your system just started cooling. And it was like there was so much work you could do, just not the panic attack work. And then it was like, and then I remember it started coming on, and we could start addressing that more specifically. So
yes, it's so true. And I think that's what was so like inspiring about this is it was individual. Like this is a program, but it's individualized, like 100%. It's not a cookie cutter. Like this is how it works for everybody. Like, and that was comforting to know that we were figuring out what worked for me, using all these tools, but how it worked for me. And that also made me feel very comfortable with the process. That could be anxiety producing facing this stuff, but I felt comfortable because we weren't pushing too much. We were doing what I could handle. Small, I was never in a place where I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. No, like it was very much, try this and then keep going, or not, or pull back, or rearrange stuff. So that was so helpful.
Yeah, wonderful. And then after you started getting that first like place through, your first results, what started happening like week 2? What started happening then that really started to what happened? What was your next breakthroughs?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question. I feel like my next breakthroughs were I was paying more attention to my inner voice, actually, because I think I was so used to just like shutting it all off because was in such a state of panic that I couldn't deal with any of it. But I think as my body kind of started to cool, I like that. It really did. It started to cool. I was able to start like paying more attention to what my inner voice was saying. And like, I was able to start maybe looking at some of the trauma or the, anxieties from when I was younger or from when I was, whenever I was able to start to kind of look at some of that stuff and then pay attention to how my brain was responding and what was going on. And that was life changing to be able to start tuning into that voice because I had never really done that before. I never really paid attention to that. I didn't honor that. And I think making that transition to starting to listen to myself and starting to trust myself a little bit more, trust my body a little bit more, I was able to actually have confidence in my body's ability to heal. Because I think before it was just like, this is not possible for me. Like, this is just not something my brain can do. But as I was cooling and as I was able to then start like doing some of the work, some of the, different weeks of the program, I was able to really be like, this is something I can do. Like, I think this is really going to work because it's already working. So I really think this is possible for me. And that helped a lot.
Absolutely. And I remember that. And I love that when that turns on for people, that because it's like where you feel like you've got some participation, some mastery, I see you, brain. I see what you're doing. How about this? And then it's like, and then not only do you see it for the first time, it's like, you know what to do with it. And then it's like, you can really create so much more healing for yourself. And it's empowering and life-changing.
It really is. It really is. And I remember you saying, like, if there is some type of fear or something or feeling sensation in your body, and like, where is that? What is it saying to you? When was the first time you felt that? And when doing that type of intervention, it's amazing where your mind goes. And then I think that was so helpful is you said, once you kind of figured what that was out and start to heal that and start to do some of the interventions to heal that, other places where that trauma or that fear show up in your life are healing. Like, your brain, you are doing this work so that your brain can keep working without you even knowing it's working. And that took a lot of pressure off me because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to figure all of this out by myself. I just have to do these things. And then my brain will be able to start to heal and, new neural pathways and all that stuff. So that was a relief. Like, it was a burden off of my mind. Like, it was, and I saw it happen too. I really saw it happen when I faced some of my health anxiety. I mean, I wasn't as hypervigilant with some of the symptoms that I was terrified of. Like, and that was just from looking at that first time. I remember being afraid of that and healing that. It's crazy. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, wait, I haven't thought about that in a while. This is amazing. So like, yeah, you don't have to like go through every stage of your life and get rid of it everywhere. Like, you're helping your brain and your brain is doing the work it should be doing. So that was awesome.
Yes. And that's really fun for me because people, it's like when we're being terrorized by this, it's like we want to stay away from it. We don't want it to confront us. We're constantly running from it. And then all of a sudden, as we're doing healing work and like we're finding stuff is better. And it's like almost like you want to go in and like look under the stuff and be like, what's in there?
Yes.
Exactly. And that was really fun for me to watch. So you did an amazing job. Awesome work. Because it's like, and especially because when you're used to accidentally running into something and having a whole panic attack, it's like you're looking behind a door thinking you're going to walk in and you're just hammered. And so and that happening for a whole year or for, you said since 2011, and then even earlier as a child, it's like the brain can be a really scary place. Absolutely. That you don't want to look into, you don't want to trip up on, you don't want to fall down the rabbit hole and never be able to get back up. And so to be able to do enough work and build enough skill that you're kind of courageously, putting your backpack with your tools on it and you're going in to like find something to work on and heal. that's really phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
So yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations. Good job. And it's like, and it's like I bring so much to this, but I cannot bring that. I cannot bring someone to try these things and
Yes.
look. And so it's like all of you, all my clients ever, and just you specifically, it's just like you're amazing.
Thank you,
You know?
Rachel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you're amazing. And you know, I say that really truly, because I don't know, just the combination of obviously like who you are and what you bring to the table, and then these techniques, just the combination of that, and the combination of just even the flow of the program, I think was just masterful, like truly masterful. And there were times in the program where maybe it did take me a little longer to get through maybe one of the weeks because I was triggered, or it was a little hard to go in, but I realized the way the program is, I was able to revisit some of that stuff maybe I couldn't touch that first week, and it was okay. And I still like had so many breakthroughs, and really I'm at such a different place. So it just trusting the process, like trusting myself and then trusting the process was key. It was key, and really helped me, because I think that's also some of, with the anxiety too, you want to prepare for anything that's going to happen. You want to foresee all that. But sometimes you just have to trust the process. And so that I kind of learned that through this program. Yeah.
Through practicing, through having to practice
Yeah.
it and using your interventions. Yes, yes, absolutely. And you were always ready, and it's just, I just love how I just love the whole thing. It's so amazing. But let me ask you a couple more questions here.
Sure.
So you graduated 2 months ago.
Yes.
And you came in from a year-long panic attack. You worked. Well, let me ask you that. What was it? I have you do a lot of work. I mean, we do 112 hours of specific and targeted brain work with an intervention. I have you clean your brain up. I mean, this is a work program. This is not a knowledge or a thinking program. This is like, roll your sleeves up and let's rock.
Yep.
What was it like for you to add on that to your everyday life?
Yeah. Like at first, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to add this in? But I was able to, it sometimes, like, and so it was like 2 hours a day. Right. And so there would be days where I could sit for 2 hours and really do stuff. But then there were other days where that was spread out over the whole day. I would work a little bit in the morning, take a break, work a little bit. And then other times where I'd be feeling anxious and I would have to do the techniques. Like I was just forced to start working on some of the stuff we were working on. And so it's a big commitment. Like it really is a commitment. Like you going into this to get the most out of it, you really want to commit to yourself, and be able to, somehow make that time for yourself. But you can, like, you really can, like, you can be flexible with how you do it. And I did, I mean, it was COVID, but I did have the luxury of working from home. So I know that helped me a lot. But even if you don't, like, maybe you shouldn't be tapping driving, but like, you could be, you could be working on something no matter where you are. And even if you're like holding that attention and that space for yourself, like I said, it was a lot of work. But it's doable. It's doable. And it was so worth it. And I think I thought about that too. Like, this is 8 weeks. This is not for an entire year. Like, this is 8 weeks. I'm going to commit to these 8 weeks of intense work. And hopefully then I can start to be feeling better. And I was. So yeah. So I think that's also the time frame is helpful to think about too. It's not forever. Yeah.
Right on. Wonderful. And then, and then can you speak a little bit about the small group? Because that's a little bit different than, because we're doing interventions that are not talk strategies. They're not like, we're not doing talk therapy in groups.
Yes.
It's a little bit hard to wrap your head around what actually happens in the group. And then, and I think especially because if we've got anxiety, many of us have social anxiety, like the last place we want to be is in a group sometimes. And there's all these dynamics. What was that like for you being in a small group like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before I even started, I couldn't conceptualize like what this would look like how are we going to do this? And I was a little nervous. this is like the first time I've really talked about my anxiety in more of like a public forum. Only my closest friends and family know. So then thinking of going into a group and sharing some of like my hardest stuff, like was a little nerve-wracking and daunting for me. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. But I will say, like someone who was a little bit nervous about that part of it, it adds so much to the program and to my experience, because we all gathered together and you knew the other people got it. Like, even if you were coming with different issues or different reasons for being there, and we all did, everyone in my group did have different reasons for being there, you were all there doing the same work. You were all committing to yourself. You all had something that brought you here. And that was very comforting. You didn't feel alone. You felt supported. You felt that energy of everyone working together on this. Like, you just felt it. You felt that supportive energy. And it was transformational for me. It really was. It was really cool because it was, the group part of it was a combination of coming together and sharing and holding space for each other, but also doing stuff on your own too. It was kind of the perfect combination. And you also learned a lot from the people in the group, what their life experience, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. It just, you learn so much about the people in your group and just about people, like how strong everyone is. They've been dealing with all this stuff and they're doing it. They're living their life still. And it's inspiring. So that part of the program I was skeptical about in the beginning, but it works so beautifully with the program. And I'm so thankful to those women in the group with me. They really helped shape that experience in a very positive light.
Yes. I almost got emotional there because that was really such a powerful group. I mean, they all are, and I could get emotional about all of them, but it's like, that was really special. I mean, it was like, I think every time there's like the divine, like there's a, like people are brought together for very specific reasons. There's sometimes when I'm doing a program and I've graduated everybody and it's just me and somebody else in there, before the next wave comes in. And it's like, that's even like perfect.
Yeah. Yes.
It was like you guys were just so like perfectly brought together.
Totally. I totally agree with you. And even like you said, even the amount of people at the different times, like when I first started, it was me and one other woman. And that was perfect because really, those were weeks that were hard for me to like, even, I was nervous about doing the group. Right. And so like having only one other person was kind of helpful. And then I was like, wait a second, this is awesome. And then we had more people join and it was just a perfect addition to everything. So I agree with you. I think it was divinely like what each of us needed kind of happened and kind of worked out in the combination of people that were there. Yeah. It was awesome.
Wonderful. So, and then my next question where I was going before was, so what's your experience? Let me see if I can get my words to come out properly. What's your experience been since graduation? Because it's been 2 months.
Yes.
We've unpacked a lot of stuff. Where are you now? What breakthroughs have you experienced? What's new?
Absolutely. Yeah. It like, gosh, each week of the program felt my body healing. And then once I was out of the program, I was nervous to leave the program. I was very nervous because you had such intense attention, for those 8 weeks, like I said, 2 hours twice a week, that those group sessions, you have support of other people going through this with you. And when you're not in those sessions, people are still doing that work with you, even if you're all not physically together or physically on Zoom. And so I was nervous like, oh my gosh, like, is my anxiety going to come back? I was nervous for myself too. Like I made that commitment to myself for 8 weeks, but sometimes I have a hard time, upholding commitments to myself. Like I'll do anything for anyone else, but if it's me and it's for myself, sometimes I don't follow through on self-care or things like that. So I was like, am I going to even have the discipline to keep doing this work? But I did, because it was so life-changing that I did. And I would say, I miss the group. I will say that I miss the group so much. I still wish I was in it. But I've been able to still maintain the level of relief that I felt in the group, outside of the group as well. It was challenge. It's been challenging at times, not having that weekly support. But I also know we have so much support built in after the group too. We have the Facebook group, we have our graduate meetings. There are other ways to get support from you, Rachel, and to connect with women who have been part of the program, people who have been part of the program. So for me, I would say the first few weeks, like there were some things that came up in my life that were really hard, and that really did trigger my anxiety again. But I am like super excited to say that I have not, it didn't, what's the word? Like, I didn't go backwards. I didn't spiral out. It didn't take over. Maybe there were days or hours where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling horrible. My anxiety's coming back. I'm like, oh no, but I would remember, okay, like, let's do some mind mapping about one of these things. I did the tapping, I did the point holding. I used all of the tools, and I was able to like calm down. And the daily energy routines that we learn as part of the program have been key, and I feel such a difference, such a like calming of my body after I do those. So I make sure I have tools, and I think that's been awesome to see, because like it's one thing when you're in the group and you have all this intention and this like this support and this comfort that you're doing this all together. But when you can do it by yourself too afterwards, that's huge. Because then I'm like, wow, okay, I can do this. This is something I can do. This is something that not only was part of my life for 8 weeks, it can be part of my life forever. And so now, I mean, gosh, I have no issue leaving my apartment at all. Like it's COVID, so it's not like I'm going out anywhere, but I'm not nervous to do it. I'm nervous to go to this, the grocery store when I have to. I'm working out again. That was something I missed so much, and it was so upsetting to not be able to do that. But I'm like finally active again, which has only helped my whole mental health. So that has been such a life-changing thing. I spend most of my days in a decently calm state, like once again, I'm human. Like every day isn't perfect. Every hour isn't perfect by any means, but I would say I'm more calm than I am anxious. And when I do have those bad days, I'm not like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? Everything's ending, like, no, like I know it's a temporary thing. I can bring myself down. It's only a day. It doesn't have to be the rest of my life. I feel that way when something comes up. So, life-changing. I can't, like, from when I started to where I am now, which is technically only what's August, September, October, November. I mean, gosh, it's only been like you said, like a month or two since I've been out of the program, but completely life-changing. And Rachel did not tell me to say that. Like literally, this is the honest truth. I wish I had found this earlier. I really do. I don't think, once again, I believe in timing, and this is when I was supposed to find it. And, but I wish I had had these tools, and I think I could have saved myself a lot of suffering, and a lot of a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely back. I feel like I'm back to myself. I really do. And, I have still work to do 100%. Like this is, I feel like, never ending work, in the sense that you're always wanting to learn about yourself and heal. But I'm functioning. Like I am, I'm back.
Oh, so good. So good. And, and that's really why I've set up the program the way I have, is because that first year, I mean, we work so much, and then you come out like you're like a new person. Like it's like you're driving a new machine, and
Yes.
you have to build the skills for this new person. And how do I integrate my inner voice into this conversation? I've never thought about that before. I don't have any neural pathways built for that, and it's just like, or, how my body thinks that we still should respond like this.
Yes.
How do I help it understand that we're done with that?
Yes.
And,
yes.
and the habits and patterns that are neurological, and chemical. It's like, and so I think you've done a really phenomenal job of just doing what you need. You've really met your needs where you're at, whatever that is, and not made it shameful or bad, or just, this is what my brain's doing.
That's exactly right. It's not like attaching like a judgment to it, or oh my gosh, something's totally wrong with me, or like, no, like, okay, I'm really reacting right now. Like, why is that? Like, and tapping on it and seeing what comes up for me. Like, whoa, okay, I had a reaction. What's that about? And then being able to like put attention on that and gain some insight. And then it kind of resolves it a little bit. So knowing that I have those tools have been so helpful. Yeah, like meeting where I'm at.
Yeah. You know what was really one of the things that was really fun for me to watch for you was that when we would go in, I'd have you tune into your body and it had so much to say. I mean, it was like, I haven't been talked to in years. Let me tell you something. What was it like connecting with that for the first time?
It was crazy, because I think I've spent my whole life like ignoring my poor body because my health anxiety, any like symptom or anything, it freaked me out, like I tried to kind of live my life like here up, I wasn't really connected to my body. And I interestingly, I do feel like I didn't listen to it so much that it almost had to scream at me, which was this horrible anxiety year that I had. And so now I am paying attention. I'm able to pay attention without it being a trigger for me. I'm able to see that it's a way of communicating what I need or like my gut reaction to something. Sometimes I would ignore that, but it was my body saying, no, 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 this isn't right. Or no, 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 like, and I'm starting to tune into that more. And it's been life changing because I've been able to actually make decisions that are more in line with me. And I'm not living in this dissonant world where I'm just completely overriding my body. And just because it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like I'm nervous. I'm always nervous. Just keep doing it instead of saying, well, what am I nervous about? Let's look at this. Like, what is my body trying to tell me? It's been really life changing. And I've been actually using it as a tool now instead of being something that I was so afraid of. It's a tool to help me live my best life. And it's been a learning experience, and definitely I still get triggered at times, and so it's a work in progress, but I think it's key to living my best life, and a really key piece I needed to start incorporating, which this program helped me do.
Yeah. And I think that's, you just said a really powerful thing. It's key for you to listen to your body to live your best life. And I think that, in watching your process, it was because I remember one of the times where you had this experience and your body told you very clearly what the boundary was.
Yes.
And it was like, and then you were kind of like, you're like, I don't know what to do with that. And then you were like, I'm gonna go with the boundary that just was told to me.
Yes.
And you did, and it was like perfect.
It was. It was crazy. It was crazy. Like my body, I'm like, what do I do? And literally my body told me. I had such a strong reaction and I couldn't ignore it. Like I couldn't even override it. Like it was like, nope.
You have talked to me.
No,
we have exactly. Connection, and it's coming loud this time.
Exactly.
I'm participating. So
yes.
good.
Yes.
It's so good. And how? Because we've been talking about boundaries lately in some of my lives, and I think that this is I would like to pick your brain here and see if you can explain this. Did you have to be told what your boundaries were, or did you have to discover what your boundaries were? Did you have to listen to your boundaries? Like, how was that for you?
It was hard. I've struggled with boundaries my whole life because I am such a people pleaser. And it's something I always had struggled with. And I think, certain messages I've gotten, like, it's not okay to have boundaries. You have to be everything to everyone. Like, that's just how life is. That's just what's expected of you. And so I kind of lived my life like that. And it is not true that I have to be everything to everyone, but it took a lot to kind of to deprogram or unprogram myself, thinking that way. And I had to start to actually like get into with my body to see where my boundaries were, because I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. Like, even if in my gut, I felt like, I think this is a boundary that I need to set, my programming would kick in like, it's kind of mean, or that's like, it was really hard. So I like was trying to listen to my body, but then my mind was saying another thing.
And the survival center says, you will not say that.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not safe to say that.
Yeah. You will not. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
How did you work through that piece? Like, your body's telling you this is what you need to do. Your mind is telling you you will not do that. How did you do that?
Yep. it was hard. And I used the tools to kind of help with that. I really tried to get in tune with my body and my mind by doing some of the like the mind mapping, or like putting that intention out there, like, okay, like, should I do this or shouldn't I, and then tapping about it and see what came up for me. I really try to be present and kind of hear all sides of the situation that my body and mind and everything we're trying to like work through. And then like I kind of had to try it out. Like I kind of had to be like, okay, this is my boundary. And then people would react to it sometimes. And I was like, oh my God, was that wrong? Then I had to work on that. Like, well, why is that? Like, and then I kind of even helping look at like where some of those boundaries came from. Some of those like, okay, why do I think that? Or when was I told that? And kind of healing some of that, I was able to be like, this makes sense why I'm having a hard time with this. And then I was able to kind of give myself permission to do something different. So it's kind of a combination of using the tools, getting in touch, and then also figuring out like where some of this came from, and then just trying it out and then working through people's reactions to it. Because I never want to hurt people's feelings or disappoint people. And so if someone was disappointed, I took it on personally. So then working through that issue. So it was hard. Yeah, it was kind of a combination of just like trying it out and also being purposeful about it too.
Yeah. I find that week can go many different directions, because it's the week of going and finding the boundaries, turning them on, communicating them, evaluating them, looking at the subconscious coding for the boundaries that how did we get this boundary? How did we start ignoring this boundary? Where did we lose it? Where did it go off what happened here? And then looking at the survival codes. What's safe? What's not safe? Does our brain think if we do this, we're going to die? Is it kicking us into flee, fight, freeze? And then I think that, you guys are perfectly ready to start working through all of that, and you do a beautiful job. And I think that there's a point when people come to the end of their neural pathways where there's nothing built. They want something there, but there's nothing yet. And really, I hold space like your brain's going to build it. Watch. And, and that can be really frustrating for people, because they're like, just tell me what my boundary is, and I can't.
Exactly.
Because I cannot tell you that. We have to get your system it has to match you perfectly. Your brain has to develop this boundary for you. And it's right there. Let's go put all the pieces together. Let's help your brain put the pieces together.
Yes.
So tell you where the boundary is. And so I don't recall you having a challenge with that, but I'm asking you now.
Yeah.
What was there any difficulty that week with finding and putting your boundaries on?
I think I had a hard time. Like, I think I know my boundaries, but I think I have a hard time enacting them. And I also feel like I have a hard time, like I don't enact them. And then all of a sudden I get so, then I put a hard boundary down, like I put up. And then I'm like, no, and so I had to figure out how can I start putting boundaries out from the start? Like, I know what they are. Like, I kind of know what they are. Even if my brain is saying, oh, you don't have the right to have that, like, I kind of know where those lines are. But then I had to figure out, how do I not only set them earlier, but also hold them up? Because I think I'm also good at saying my piece. Well, I've gotten better. I didn't used to be, but I'm better at, saying, okay, this is my boundary. But then if someone violates it, I have a really hard time being like, actually, like, remember we talked about this? Like, I have a very hard time. I'll let it go. And so that was where I struggled, and then I also think I did struggle with, is this an appropriate boundary? Is this too strong of a boundary? Is this too loose of a boundary? I think I had a lot of second guessing. I think that's where it came in with me. I had a lot of like voices saying, this, that, and so that's where I had to kind of like hone that in, honor my truth, figure out what my truth was. Yeah, but it was helpful. I think the tools really helped. The tools that we learned that week really helped. And I know you said it perfectly. You said, you don't have to do it perfectly. Like, you don't have to be perfect with this either.
Yeah.
Put the boundary out, and maybe you'll realize, okay, that was a little too strong or too loose, and then you can adjust. It doesn't have to be perfect, but start seeing what works for you by doing it too. And that was helpful for me to hear. That was very helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially because, with some people that's terrible advice, like because it's like it's not safe to set the boundary, right? But it's like, but for you, just like you just assessed, like it wasn't, you felt like it was safe to set the boundary.
Yes.
You had some internal conflict and wanting to
Yes.
be nice. And so, and as we worked through that, it was like, okay, practice time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But it is interesting because the whole not feeling safe part is so legitimate. Because I think looking back on people pleasing in my history with that, I think it wasn't safe for me. And maybe not physically, I think physically was safe, but emotionally it didn't feel
Yeah,
safe for me to set some of those boundaries. So then also making sure that I was comfortable when I did
that's
start to
right.
set some of those. Yeah, like, am I okay with dealing with this reaction right now? Like, am I safe to do this? I think
Right.
that was also helpful. And because I think sometimes I judged myself for being a people pleaser, but it was also my brain protecting me
That's right.
because it didn't feel safe. It's like you doing this, it's not because you're weak or you're a pushover. It's because you don't feel safe and your brain's there to keep you safe. So that I think also took the judgment out of it for me, because I think that was also an obstacle for me. I felt very, I judged myself. I judged myself for having a hard time with boundary setting.
Right.
But that was helpful to couch it in that way.
Yeah. And I think that, we have these moments when, you talked about it earlier, that you're constantly pushing yourself. And we're pushing ourselves past the place of safe, where our brain thinks it's safe. We're making ourselves do things that our brain is screaming it's unsafe. And I just feel like that's not kind. That's not fair. And it's like, let's sit with that part that's saying this isn't safe,
Mm.
and let's bring up the reasons. Let's bring up the neurological coding. Let's bring up the survival code about it. Let's look at it. Let's evaluate. Let's put it in front of the part of the brain that can actually do something with it, and maybe speak some reason to the rest of the brain, and like help it resolve its issue. Because all of a sudden it'll be like, maybe it's not that. Maybe we'll live. Maybe it could be safe. And then it's like all of a sudden your system's like, well, let's try it. You know? and as I'm hearing that, I'm like, yeah, let's try it. But if you're like this, I don't want to, don't. Right?
100%. All like meeting yourself where you are. I think that was also a huge takeaway, like meeting yourself where you are and not judging yourself. I think I did judge myself, and that's why I pushed myself way outside when it wasn't safe, and that I thought that's what I was supposed to do, but it hurt me and it made me feel even more unsafe.
Yeah.
But saying it's okay, I'm having this reaction for some reason. That is okay. I'm not going to judge that. This is hard for me for some reason. I'm not going to judge that, but let's explore why. And that really helped, because I think there was so much shame with like, why is this so hard for me? Why am I struggling so much? What is wrong with me? But to take that shame and that judgment, that was life-changing too. And I think none of this program was judgmental. It was all like, your brain's trying to protect you. Like, it's trying to do its job, but it needs some help. And it was very helpful to hear that.
Good. So good. So good. And it's like, sometimes we feel like it's, if I keep protecting myself, if I don't push myself through, my life will get smaller. And it's not. It's like your life gets smaller because you keep pushing through, because you're traumatizing yourself. And it's like, if we can just be where we are and help that and work through it, naturally we'll grow. I don't think humans need to be forced to grow. I mean, I just personally don't believe that. So I think that's part of our nature is growth.
I completely agree.
Yeah, if we get the right support and the right things that we need, we grow.
100%. 100%. And I think sometimes in society, we're told, just push through, just do it. Just, this is how you're supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to act. And if you're not in alignment with that, you push yourself because you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. But then you traumatize yourself. And then, like you said, your life becomes smaller when you're trying to avoid that. Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's what happened with me. Definitely.
Yes. Wonderful. Let me see here. Okay. What advice would you give someone who's struggling with the same challenges that you had?
Oh, well, I would first give them a huge hug, like huge hug, sending so much love and light to anyone who is struggling with this, because, oh my gosh, it is horrible. It is I can only speak from my own experience, but to me, it felt like true suffering. True, I don't like this word, but true torture. I mean, it was very tortuous. It really was. It was horrible. So I just send so much love to anyone going through it. And just to say that there is another side. Like, you do not have to feel this way. And I know when I was in the midst of it, I felt like I don't think I'll ever feel better. And maybe I'll feel better enough to function, but I don't think this is just who I am. I'm just going to have to somehow deal with this. Gosh, that is not true. It is not true. And thanks to this program, I realized it's not true. I would say these tools, like being part of this program, was life-changing for me. And it was scary to jump in, blindly. But getting help in different ways, is so important. Reaching out, knowing you're not alone, like you're not alone. And that's the beautiful thing about this community, regardless of whether you do the program or not, like, you're not alone by being here. There are people who know what you're going through, and you're never alone. And so I would say that because I think when I was in the midst of it, I felt like, I don't think I'm ever going to feel better, or how long is this going to go on? Like, when is this going to turn around? Like, oh my gosh, and I could say, like, it will turn around, and you can live a life where you're not bound by your anxiety or your panic disorder. That's really, I would want to instill hope. And because I know sometimes it feels cliche, or like, you're like, well, great, I'm like struggling. You're saying I have hope, like, but there is hope. And I'm proof of that. Like, I never, living with anxiety for as long as I did, I never thought I would get the type of relief that I have just by doing this program. I mean, there's no medication involved here. It's honestly, it's using your own self. Like, you're doing this, like, going through this program, you are the one doing it, and you're the one going through your brain, and you're the one doing the interventions. Like, you can heal yourself. You need the support. Like, the support is so important. Reach out for support. You need that support, but it is possible, and you can be the one to help yourself just with the right tools. Yeah.
Great, good. And I have another question. And because you just talked about it a little bit, because I don't, there's no medication involved with my program. Some people come in with medication, some people, I don't, medication. But for you, what ended up happening with you and your medication?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I've been on anxiety medication at different points in my life, like back in 2011. And then, I was feeling better and I went off it. And then, so I am currently on Celexa, so it's like an anti-anxiety, antidepressant. But when my anxiety was so out of control, my doctor put me on Klonopin. And I have panic disorder, so I always carry it with me. And that, just knowing it's there if I need it, is enough. I don't actually need to take it. So when they told me to take it, I was very nervous. I was like, oh, I have health anxiety. I don't want to have side effects from this drug. I was freaking out, but it was my only option at that point. And so I took it. And I'm super sensitive to medication. And so after being on it a few months, I'm like, I don't want to be on this, but I don't want to not be on this. So I started tapering with my doctor's help. But I never thought I'd ever be able to fully get off of it, because I was so afraid of going back to how I felt. And I also didn't feel like there would ever be anything that would give me enough relief to be a functioning person without some additional help. But I started this program as I was, tapering off the Klonopin, and it's so funny how it all worked out. 2 weeks before I stopped the program, I took my last dose of Klonopin, like, done. And I've not taken one since. And I haven't needed to, because when I'm feeling super anxious, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a panic attack, I have those tools that I can help myself with. But there also is absolutely, I just do want to say, there is no shame in taking medication. I'm taking medication right now. It has been a necessary tool for me, a necessary tool. So the medication combined with the tools that I learned with Rachel have been the perfect combination for me. So no shame in the medicine, no shame if you are on Klonopin. I just want to say that I never thought I would be able to feel calm without that. Even though I'd only been on it for a few months, I hadn't been on it for my whole life, but I was I just didn't see it a way for me to get off of it, but I was. And so I'm here to say, like, if you're in that same place, like, obviously deal with it with your doctor, but there is a place where you potentially, depending on who you are, and your situation,
That's right.
it's possible. It is possible. I never thought it would be for me, but for me, it was. Yeah.
Right on. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Any last parting things you'd like to share before we wrap up? Let
You
you
know,
off.
I guess I just, like I said, I want to send out like so much love and light to everyone, no matter where you're at, whether you're on the other side of, struggling with anxiety or any of these disorders, or if you're like in the thick of it, or worried about it. I just want to send so much love and light because it's really tough. And it adds a whole level of strength that you have to kind of keep going with some of these issues that you struggle with. And I think that's really, really admirable. And just knowing you're not alone, and that this community that Rachel has created is just has been such a blessing for me. And has made such a difference in my life. And I mean, I don't know what I'd do without it. I wish everyone needs to do it. Everyone needs to do the program and be part of the community. But regardless of what you do, I see you. I'm with you in your struggle, and just sending a lot of healing light your way. You're not alone. You're not alone. I think something my mom would always say to me, you don't have to feel this way. When I was so down, she was like, you don't have to feel this way. There are ways that you can feel better. And thank goodness I found something that really works for me in this program. And I know that's out there
Yep.
for everyone. That healing is a possibility for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
No matter how dire.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So thank you for sharing that. It's so amazing to have you share your life, your story, your experience. I mean, it's really very generous of you. So thank you very much for that. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here and hearing Corinne's story. And if, I want to just let you know, if doing this program is something that's on your heart, you feel inclined to do, and you want to talk with me about that, go ahead and grab a spot on my calendar. We'll have a conversation about that. And by going to rachelmcleod.com/call, and I'll spend an hour with you, 45 minutes to an hour. However long we need to really help you look at where you're at, where you want to go. If I can help you get there, I will absolutely show you what that would look like. And if we're not the right fit, make sure that you know what your next steps are, because I know what this is like. I know what I had my own raging anxiety disorder and trauma disorder, and Corinne did as well. And so it's like, you're not alone, you're not broken, and we need every one of us to heal, and we can. And so thank you for joining us, and we will see you another time. Take care. Now if I can figure out my Facebook. That's always the thing. Oh, there we go.